West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We are inching closer to a general election rematch between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Now, in terms of fundraising, the Democrats currently have a financial advantage over the Republicans. Joe Biden started the year with $46 million on hand compared to Trump's $33 million. Here's some news, though. Perhaps that imbalance will not last for long. Check out this scoop from the New York Times tonight. You see the headline there. Donald Trump seeking cash infusion meets with Elon Musk. New York Times reporting that Donald Trump met with Elon Musk and also a few other wealthy Republican donors seeking a cash infusion to support his campaign. That was within the last few days. That was reportedly over the weekend. According to the Times, Trump is now hoping to have a one-on-one meeting just with Elon Musk, who reportedly has been saying that he believes it is, quote, essential to defeat Joe Biden in November, quoting the New York Times there. Elon Musk, of course, is one of the two richest people on earth. He could single-handedly erase any financial advantage Democrats might have heading into the general election in November if he decided to and if he wanted to play it that way. What would that mean for what happens to the world and the republic?
And we're sure that money is not to pay Donald Trump's legal bills.
Guess what? It can. And when we all sit here and go, oh my gosh, Donald Trump owes $83 million on E. Jean Carroll, he owes $400 million here, and we say he doesn't have that money, guess what? Whether it's Elon Musk or all sorts of other supremely wealthy forces out there, they would be happy to pay the bills for someone who could be the next president.
Yeah,
Elon Musk
owns the president of the United States.
He hates the FTC. And how much would he like it if he then owned the president?
Yes, I mean, this is, let's go back to Citizens United and Mitch McConnell and John Roberts, who have crafted the universe in which we operate, who have brought us to a position where the richest billionaire out of it's like an 1890s Gilded Age cartoon in a newspaper, and the corrupt president desperately in need of cash have a meeting, and what is either the explicit or implied quid pro quo in that interaction? Musk has tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of government contracts with the Pentagon through SpaceX. He has unbelievable amounts of interest in regulatory affairs. He's currently suing to get rid of the National Labor Relations Act of the New Deal to destroy unions across the board and render them unconstitutional. That is a current lawsuit he has filed onto. Think about the sheer ROI, return on investment, of an investment, and it so shocks the conscience that this would even be possible. And it's only possible, again, because of Mitch McConnell, because of the Roberts Court and the MAGA Court, that you could even be in a position where you have such an obviously corrupt setup.
Chris, Tesla is the only car manufacturer that is allowed to sell directly to consumer, because one of the biggest, strongest lobbies in this country is car dealership owners, right? So the fact that he could back Donald Trump, the fact that he could pay his bills and then be able to push Donald Trump around, giddy up. That's an easy one for him.
And by the way, he controls Starlink, which is critical to the defense of Ukraine and to the U.S. defense establishment. This guy could be the J.P. Morgan of the current era. He would literally own a desperate, fearful man. I sat and watched 7 minutes of Donald Trump speaking from what looked like his basement the other day. Donald Trump is afraid. He's afraid of going to prison. He's afraid of losing everything that he built in New York, well, that his dad built, and then he borrowed money from the Russians or whatever after he failed at business. But he could be saved right now. All he needs is a billionaire like Elon Musk who wants to own him.
And to be president.
And then he gets to be president and he gets to dismiss all his cases. Boom. He's basically, that is his MBS.
He's running for his life.
He's running for his life.
It also, does assume that Trump is inevitably going to win once he has Elon's money behind him. And though I believe that money in politics is a colossal problem.
Oh, yeah, no.
There is, he is
but you'd rather be even than outgunned.
He is, yes, but he is reliant on government contracts.
Yeah.
And, if Joe Biden's reelected and Elon Musk has bankrolled Donald Trump,
that's a great
point.
Then what do you do? Tesla wasn't invited to the last EV summit at the White House, and they won't be invited in 2025.
What you're supposed to do with that money is to fund ground campaigns, mail campaigns, etc. They're already saying they're not going to do mail. Most of that money, let's be clear, is going to go to cure Donald Trump's personal financial issues, not to the ground campaign.
Can I just say one more thing about this, because I actually find it very usefully clarifying, is that so much of the way that Donald Trump talks, so much of the way that our politics talk about, are these sort of cultural signifiers, these points of intense sort of ideological, rhetorical, demographic conflict in the country, the invaders coming over the border, the sort of Marxists that run the Democratic Party, they're trying to destroy the future. When in power, what Republican governments do is do policy that helps people like Elon Musk. They cut corporate taxes. It's the only domestic policy bill that they passed the last time around when they didn't build the wall. They had all three.
They did make it easier for people adjudicated to be mentally ill to buy firearms.
They also did that. But to me, it's just there's this whole, you're sort of watching Elon Musk self-radicalize and online every day. His brain gets mushier and mushier and mushier. And there's part of this radicalization is social media and his own ego. But again, when you look at what governments do, local governments, state governments, federal governments, when they are Republican and conservative governments with power, they deregulate, they go after unions, they cut taxes for rich people. And so there's something very clarifying about Elon Musk and Donald Trump together in the same room, because it cuts through a lot of the faux populism and culture war nonsense that masks fundamentally the material interests that are being pursued by this.
But that is also why people often falsely say Republicans are good for the economy, because in terms of deregulation, in terms of big business, that set will say a Republican is a safer bet for me.
For us, yes.
For us. And that's where that narrative comes from. You've even heard people say, well, if it's good for my boss, maybe it'll trickle down to me. It won't. But that's where the mindset comes from.
And by the way, what makes it perfect, chef's kiss perfect, is that the Supreme Court sits atop it all, trying to ensure the longevity of Republican government, because that is how they get their wonderful vacays. And they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that Donald Trump comes in so that those two grifters on the court, if I might say, can retire and have 30-year-old versions of themselves to replicate the grift.
I should just say, though, that in terms of the whole logic around there being legal policing of this, you shouldn't, ideally, in a democracy, have a multi-billionaire be able to come in and say, here are multiple billions of dollars to cover all your legal fees, to cover all your campaigning fees, and to set you up in a way that you can't lose. We technically shouldn't have that. But how do we police it? We police it by shame, right? Because it's speech. Money is speech, and therefore it's transparency. And so if all we can do is force disclosure of the funding, that will take care of itself, because people will be repulsed by this.
But Rachel, shamelessness is Donald Trump's superpower. Yes. Remember, back when we were saying this guy doesn't pay his taxes, and he said, you're right, I don't, because I'm smart. But a knock to Democrats, when Joe Biden was running, he said, I'm going to close so many loopholes so it won't just be shameful for Republicans to violate emoluments and so on and so forth. And they haven't. And if we end up with a Donald Trump again, like it's no holds barred. MBS, come on over for a barbecue.
I'm just going to say that there is this idea when you study countries that used to be democracies that slid out of democracy and became authoritarian instead. One of the things that everybody who studies that in every country tells you is that the institutions cannot defend themselves.
That's right.
And we have set up our institutions so that their defense against authoritarian rule and anti-democratic tactics is shame.
Right.
And is transparency, and is people knowing the information and being able to react accordingly. If that is all we've got, then our institutions will not defend our democracy. If we let things play out along these lines, our democracy will fall and we will become a country that doesn't have elections anymore. And so we're in a situation right now where we can't count on the existing structures to just do this on autopilot. There's only one way out of this. You have to pick one. You have to pick Donald Trump or you have to pick Joe Biden.
Yes.
There isn't a magic other answer.
Nope.
There's no institution, there's no court, there's no criminal prosecution.
There's also no
there is no
truth right
institution.
now, because
there
people
is
don't hear it.
There's no magic in the media. There's people having to figure out which one of those candidates they want and what it means for the future of this country.
Yeah.
And then going out and doing the work to make sure that that candidate wins. It means not only voting, it means literally doing what you can to make one of those two candidates win. And if you're not working for one of them, you are by default working for the other.
And by the way, you know what?
It's all we've got.
What the Biden campaign folks said, they're sending out two words tonight: cementing reality. And what you just said is what they're saying. They're saying what tonight was about was cementing the reality that it's Biden or Trump. And what Joe Biden was able to do is to clear 80% in almost all of these races to cement that reality. They're hoping that emotionally they can cement that reality for their voters, because their voters are the ones who are most fantasy prone when it comes, more so than Republicans, but Republicans are more disconnected from each other. They are actually having a fight that's bigger than the fight inside the Democratic Party. You just have some Democrats who would love for Joe Biden to change his Middle East policy.
Democrats hoping that Republicans are going to take care of this problem, this Donald Trump problem, on their own side.
Not going to happen.
It's not happening.
It is Wednesday, the 6th of March of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? No one. Boy, wouldn't it be nice to have a separation of church and state? Remember those halcyon days? Barely. Yeah. Somehow they wanted to imbue their sense of power upon all of us for quite some time. Let us not forget. Okay. I mean, we wouldn't have had the Scopes trial without, well, you know, a little bit of intrusion of religion into the state. And there's a big reason for it. We all know why, and I'm preaching to the choir, so I don't need to remind you of it. But there. Well, we had a Super Tuesday yesterday, and will the major networks, the media and cable and whatnot, will they lead their day, their storylines with Joe Biden winning every single primary except for two? Okay. Or was it that he didn't get American Samoa? Because apparently Jason Palmer, who as far as I can tell is the son born out of wedlock to Laura Palmer, and he was lost somewhere, somehow, and now he's shown up in America Samoa and wrested the presidential nomination from Joe. So, I don't know. Is American Samoa a bellwether for what's going to go on with the rest of our general election? Let's see. This was the primary. So, anyway, who is Jason Palmer? I don't know. Maybe he's the Dean Phillips of his, I don't know, station in life. Maybe. We'll see. Anyway, Joe trounced, and it looks like old Donnie there is having a few problems. And not just with his legal problems, and as the clip up top about the panel on MSNBC, which I got to tell you, by and large, I'm getting even more pissed off at MSNBC. I almost was going to lead with the clip of Rachel Maddow cutting off Trump's victory speech so that they could pretty much fact-check the mofo. But I don't know. I wanted to bring up this thing about Elon Musk. Anyway, we're not going to hear too much about Joe's successes unless we make it so, and we have to. So there. And once again, I'm preaching to the choir. We all know what to do. It's not just go out and vote, but when we see a lie, we may have to correct it or mock it. Mocking is pretty good too. Almost gets your point across. It pisses off the people that are perpetuating the lie, but you're not going to convince them anyway. All right? They know they're lying. And on the other hand, if they don't, well, then ignorance is no excuse. It's the American way. All righty. Well, apparently Trump wants to change that virtue to ignorance is bliss. What I don't know means I can do anything I want. Yeah, I can stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot a bunch of people because ignorance is bliss. Yeah. Okay. Is that who and what we want running our country? Apparently, there's a sizable block that says, damn right. Okay. Because we've held them down for so long while they amassed fortunes to be able to stock arsenals in their McMansions and transport them around in their god-awful semi-sized personal assault vehicles. They call them trucks. Yeah, pickup trucks. They call them pickup trucks. I don't know. It looks like a urban assault vehicle to me. Okay. Well, what do we have in store for you here in the Bistro Cafe as we begin this fabulous Smothered Benedict Wednesdays? Oh, you know what? I should note, yesterday we did go and have the pre-op workup for my mom for her stent in her carotid artery surgery, which happens tomorrow. So we're good to go, but because there's quite a bit to do, I've got to throw her in the shower. I don't throw my mom in the shower. It's just a turn of a phrase. But we shower her with the Herbiclean, I think is what it's called. It's antiseptic wash that she needs to douse herself with. And then once again in the morning, we do that tonight before she goes to bed. And then we do it again in the morning tomorrow. And since I have to have her in there fairly early, meaning that if I was to do a show, we would be leaving pretty much in the minute that the show ends. And I don't have time now to be able to throw her in the shower and do all the other things that we have to do to prep her to get her out the door. So I do not believe we will have a show tomorrow. We may have a clip show if I'm able to today, though I don't think so because I'm pretty busy today too. If I'm able to put a show together, I will. But it may just be that we have a clip. And I mean a file, something to substitute in the stead of our regular programming. So that's how it's going to be. We're not going to do an actual show tomorrow as we normally do, but we'll have something, shall we say, meaty in its place, indeed. All right, what do we have in store for you here? As we begin in the Bistro Cafe, Liberty University will pay the largest fine ever levied under the Federal Clery Act, the act that says that colleges and universities that get federal funds have to give a yearly accounting of, crime on campus, sexual assaults, etc., etc. Yeah, and Liberty University passes itself off as the most safe institution in the United States. Safe for who? Rapists? I guess so. The Kentucky Senate passed a bill to grant the right to collect child support for unborn children. Now, this isn't necessarily a personhood bill, but it's interesting nonetheless, and I might be for it. And Arizona's Democratic governor vetoed an unconstitutional border bill approved by the Republican-led legislature. After the break, we move to the chef's table where, in spite of not possessing a navy, Ukrainian sea drone attacks have increasingly sapped the power of Russia's Black Sea Fleet. And thousands of striking junior doctors in South Korea face the suspensions of their medical licenses. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Across the page to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the left from that chat room link is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance, if you could send those funds to us instead once a month, it really does help us pay down those bills that are required, apparently, to run this powerhouse of resistance. ISP bill never goes down. Nope. Keeping the homepage up and running, that doesn't really go down either. There's quite a bit of costs associated with running this powerhouse of resistance, and we would be unable to do it without you. So thank you for your generosity. To those of you who have been so generous over these many years, and to those of you who have increased their monthly patronage, thank you very much. And welcome to those of you who are new Patreons. Welcome aboard, and thank you so much. Really, truly, we would not be able to do it without you, so thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, Facebook, etc., 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 you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of those. Thank you, Tom. We all take care of Facebook, but Tom takes care of it mostly, even Facebook. Alrighty. Hey, follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, etc., at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes 10 minutes before showtime. And that way you have quick access. If you follow my social media feeds, you'll have quick access to those Daily Codes diaries, which is not the easiest site to navigate, let me just say, even though we love it dearly. But you would have quick access to those diaries where you then can have quick access to the links of the actual stories by the actual reporters. Hey, also, if you would, pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, even Audible now. And you can do so, by picking up the show there. And that would be grand if you did. And if there's any kind of reviewing that they ask you to do, I hope you do. So thank you for doing that as well. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Ben Finley. Liberty University has agreed to pay an unprecedented $14 million fine for the Christian school's failure to disclose information about crimes on its campus and for its treatment of sexual abuse or sexual assault survivors. And that was announced by the U.S. Department of Education yesterday, Tuesday. The fine is by far the largest ever levied under the Clery Act, a law that requires colleges and universities that receive federal funding to collect data on campus crime and notify students of threats. Schools must disseminate an annual security report that includes crime reports and information on efforts to improve campus safety. Liberty has marketed itself for years as being one of the nation's safest campuses for white Christian nationalists. Let's not forget, Falwell was a white Christian nationalist, and he set up a bunch of schools for white kids because he didn't like integration. That's the devil's work. Yeah. Well, with more than 15,000 students enrolled at the school in Lynchburg, see what I mean? Lynchburg, Virginia, but its police department had a single officer with minimal oversight for investigating crimes during most of the time period reviewed by federal investigators in 2016 to 2023. Barney Fife. The U.S. Department of Education said it identified numerous cases that resulted in the misclassification or underreporting of crimes, and there were several incidents that the university determined to be unfounded without evidence the initial report was false. Federal investigators cited a case in which a woman reported being raped with the attacker telling her he had a knife. The final program review stated Liberty's investigator unfounded this case based on a claim that the, quote, victim indicates that she consented to a sexual act, end quote, the final program review stated. Now, this is by the university. In point of fact, the victim's own statement merely indicated that she gave in an attempt to get away from the perpetrator. That episode was ultimately counted in the crime statistics, the final program review stated, after Liberty's Clery compliance officer realized the case was mishandled at several points in the process. And I apologize, the final program review is by the Board of Ed, or Department of Ed. Eek. Many victims of sexual crimes feared reporting because of concerns of reprisal. Several were punished for violating the student code of conduct known as the Liberty Way, while their assailants were left unpunished. The university said in a statement that it is, quote, fully committed to maintaining the safety and security of students and staff without exception, end quote. The school said it would continue to cooperate with the U.S. Department of Education, and it noted that it has made more than $10 million in significant improvements since 2022 toward complying with the Clery Act and other laws, including in educational programming, new leadership, and staffing. Oh, that's right. Falwell Jr. is off gallivanting around the country right now. You know, pool boys, all of that. Now, to be clear, the $14 million fine against Liberty University appears to be but a small fraction of its total operating revenues, which were $1.2 billion with a B without donor restrictions in fiscal year 2022, according to an annual report. The school's net assets were $3.5 billion. Bruce Schreiner of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. The Republican-led Kentucky Senate voted overwhelmingly yesterday, Tuesday, to grant the right to collect child support for unborn children, advancing a bill that garnered bipartisan support. The measure would allow a parent to seek child support up to a year after giving birth to retroactively cover pregnancy expenses. I think when they say allow a parent, I think it means the mom. Okay? Is the dad going to sue the mom to pay for the child support? Well, we'll see. The legislation, Senate Bill 110, won Senate passage on a 36-2 vote with little discussion to advance to the House. Republicans have supermajorities in both chambers. Republican State Senator Whitney Westerfield said afterward that the broad support reflects a recognition that pregnancy carries with it an obligation for the other parent, the dad, to help cover the expenses incurred during those 9 months. Westerfield is a staunch abortion opponent and a sponsor of the bill. The measure sets a strict time limit, allowing a parent to retroactively seek child support for pregnancy expenses up to a year after giving birth. This final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. An Arizona bill that would have made it a crime for non-citizens to enter the state through Mexico at any location other than a port of entry has been vetoed by Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs. The Republican-controlled legislature approved the measure late last month along party lines. Arizona has emerged as a popular border crossing point, and the bill would have let local law enforcement arrest non-U.S. citizens who enter Arizona from anywhere but a, quote, lawful, end quote, entrance point. A violation would be a top-tier misdemeanor or a low-level felony for a second offense. In a letter to Arizona Senate President Warren Peterson, Hobbs said the measure raised constitutional concerns and was expected to lead to costly litigation. The move comes as Republicans in several states, notably Texas, trumpet tough immigration policies in the lead up to this year's presidential election. Almost like they're scapegoating and pandering, huh? The bill's sponsor, Republican Senator Janae Shamp, said in a statement that the veto is a prime example of the chaos Hobbs is unleashing in our state while perpetuating this open border crisis as Biden's accomplice. Federal law already prohibits the unauthorized entry of migrants into the United States. However, Republicans in Arizona and Texas say that the U.S. government is not doing enough and they need additional state powers because, as we know, cruelty is always the point. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again. From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, let's get together and feel all right. When thinking about Bob Marley One Love, I wonder not about directors, writers, or actors, but about the people behind the movie and what they wanted. Because One Love is the Marley family's film. They produced it. Hell, Ziggy Marley himself introduces it by thanking you for coming and assuring you that he was on set almost every day. And how intimidating must that have been? But I imagine that, being popular musicians, the Marleys understand well the dual nature of commercial art. And it's something that you see in the movie. It's not what it's about, but you see it. You've got your story, you've got your mission, you've got your message you want to get across, but you've also got to sell a crap ton of records. And thus, I see 4 content lines in this flick. There's the very focused, almost slice-of-life biographical story, bookended by 2 free Jamaica concerts in 76 and 78 that are supposed to end the violence between warring political parties. And in between those concerts, because of the violence, Bob Marley and the Wailers leave Jamaica and end up in London, where they write and record Exodus. There's what I call the flashbacks of firsts. Bob and Rita first getting together, Rita taking Bob to his first Rastafarian ceremony, the Wailing Wailers recording their first record with Lee Scratch Perry, etc. There's the recurring dreamlike sequence of young Bob in a burning cane field. And then there's what started this consideration with me, the music in Bob Marley One Love, which to me felt less integrated into the movie as a whole than in other music star biopics. Especially the first 3 musical moments. They just hit me as gratuitous, and I couldn't shake the feeling after that. Like someone saying, okay, we gotta have the tunes, because everybody loves the tunes. They're coming to hear the tunes. Want to see Lindsay play Bob playing the tunes. I mean, Legend is one of the top-selling albums of all frickin' time. Gotta have those tunes. I don't know. I just hope the family got what they wanted, which was probably to tell their story and sell a crap ton of tickets. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, this is Your Health Quickly, a Scientific American podcast series.
We bring you the latest vital health news, discoveries that affect your body and your mind.
And we break down the medical research to help you stay healthy. I'm Tanya Lewis.
I'm Josh Fishman.
We're Scientific American's senior health editors. Today we're doing a follow-up episode on the best ways to use home COVID antigen tests. This time, we're looking at whether you get more accurate results if you swab your throat as well as your nose. We'll also talk about the new CDC guidelines about how long to isolate if you're positive.
It's February, and COVID levels are still quite high in the U.S. They're way above what the CDC describes as epidemic levels, which means that a lot of people are sick, including me, as it turns out, though I may just have a bad cold.
Oh man, that's rough. It seems like I'm constantly hearing about a friend or coworker testing positive for COVID. And that means a lot of people are taking home tests.
Last month, you and I talked about a frustrating wrinkle in those test results.
Yeah, people who got symptoms and tested right away were getting negative results, even though they were actually infected. And that seems to be because your immune system is now familiar enough with the virus to react quickly and cause symptoms like a runny nose or stuffy nose. But the virus itself hasn't built up to high enough levels in your nose to trigger a positive test result. In other words, it's a false negative.
If you wait a few days after symptoms start, say 2 to 4 days, and then you test, you're more likely to get an accurate result. But that's frustrating, right? You know you're sick with something, and you don't want to pass COVID around. But until you know for sure, you stay home or you keep your kids home from school. And then maybe it turns out to be a winter cold or the flu.
It's a good idea to stay home if you have any respiratory infection if you can, even if it's not COVID. Even the flu kills thousands of vulnerable people every year. Still, it would be nice to know if you could reduce those early false negatives with COVID tests and find out if you actually do have the virus.
That's why a lot of people are talking about swabbing their throat in addition to the nose. 2 of our listeners, Ann and J.D. Stillwater of Pennsylvania, emailed us to ask how accurate throat swabbing is. There are a bunch of online videos touting that method now.
Stand in front of a mirror. Wipe the soft tip of the swab around the back of the throat as shown.
That was the UK Health Security Agency, the equivalent of our CDC.
I've heard of that approach before. In fact, I've swabbed my own throat on several occasions when I wanted to make extra sure I wasn't missing an infection. But it's a surefire way to gag. Is it actually more accurate?
It could be. Some scientists believe that early in an infection, the virus replicates more in the throat than in the nose. So you'd be more likely to collect more virus. When it comes to studies of accuracy, they've mostly been on small numbers of people. And some of those studies say that throats are more accurate. Others say they're not more accurate. Now, what seems to be one of the biggest and one of the more carefully done studies on throat swabs was just published in December. So we thought we'd go straight to one of the researchers.
My name is Tobias Todsen, and I'm a consultant at Copenhagen University Hospital. I'm also an associated professor at Copenhagen University, and I'm a consultant in otolaryngology.
That's an ear, nose, and throat doctor to you and me. Todsen and his colleagues conducted a randomized trial in Denmark of about 2,600 people. Some got nasal swabs, some got throat swabs, and some got both. And some of them used the swabs on themselves, while others had a healthcare worker collect the samples. The scientists confirmed the presence of the virus with a molecular test, like a PCR test, and that's the gold standard of accuracy here.
We saw that there was a difference in when healthcare workers performed the test and you did it yourself. So when the healthcare workers performed the test, then the throat was 9.4% better than the nasal swab. We didn't find any significant difference between the self-collected swabs comparing throat swabs with nasal swabs.
So throat swabs were only more accurate when a healthcare worker did the swabbing. That makes sense. Speaking from personal experience, it's pretty hard to swab your own throat.
Yeah, and these are home tests, so going to a clinic to have a healthcare worker do one for you, it kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? But Todsen found something else that was pretty important, and that's got to do with combining nose and throat swabs in the same test.
It's home testing. If you combined the nasal and the throat swabs, then you will improve the sensitivity about 15% compared to nasal swab alone, meaning that combined swabs, nasal and throat swab, will decrease the risk of false negative results.
Wait, so is he saying that swabbing your throat only doesn't detect more infections, but swabbing both your nose and throat does?
Yeah, exactly. They used two separate swabs in the study and then combined the samples. But since home test kits have single swabs, Todsen suggests using them this way.
I would first make a throat swab on myself, and then I'll use the same stick for the nasal swab. And then I will handle the swab as you see in the instruction for the rapid antigen test you have bought.
But those instructions, at least in all the US home tests, say to swab the nose only. And besides, the FDA hasn't approved any tests involving throat swabbing.
Yeah, look, Todsen thinks that going both nose and throat will improve accuracy. Basically, you're hitting more places, so that improves the chances of grabbing some virus. But it's a bit tricky in the US. First of all, the swabs in our kits are pretty short. You want to get them to the top of your throat, kind of at the roof of your mouth and past your teeth. But it's hard to reach that area unless you stick your fingers in your mouth, too.
And that's even more likely to make you gag.
Sure is. I tried it myself just last night because I have sniffles and a sore throat. But like you, I made some icky sounds. If you look at that UK health security video, their swabs are a lot longer and easier to get in and out. And like you said, the US tests aren't calibrated for accuracy using both nose and throat. So we don't really know how well they'll perform. Todsen's numbers say they'll lower the rate of false negatives, and some smaller studies back him up. But clearly, here the science is moving faster than the manufacturing. So I'll back up my combined swab with a nose-only one tomorrow. And meanwhile, I'm staying home. Anne and JD from Pennsylvania, I know that's not a cut and dried answer, but for now, it's what we've got.
It does look like these ambiguous results from home tests might get a little easier to navigate in the near future. The distinction between what positive and negative strips mean for your behavior might not be so drastic.
In what way?
Well, the CDC has just changed the COVID isolation period. A positive test doesn't automatically mean you need to stay home for 5 days anymore. The agency has shifted to letting symptoms be your guide. If you've been free of fever for a full 24 hours without the help of medication, and your symptoms are mild and improving, you don't need to stay home.
Wow, that is certainly a change.
Yeah, it is. Some people might say the guidelines are too lax. You could still be infectious after your fever goes away, so it's not a perfect way to prevent all infections. But the CDC might be trying to give people guidance they're actually likely to follow, and treat COVID more like the flu and other respiratory infections now that we have some immunity and protection against it.
Your Health Quickly is produced by Timmy Broderick, Talika Bose, Jeff Delvisio, Kelso Harper, Corinne Leung, and by us. It's edited by Ella Fetter and Alexa Lim. Our music is composed by Dominic Smith.
Our show is part of Scientific American's podcast, Science Quickly. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, give us a rating or review. And if you have a topic you want us to cover, you can email us at yourhealthquickly@sciam.com. That's yourhealthquickly@sciam.com. Just a quick request. My colleague Lauren Young and I are working on a podcast series on caregiving for older family members and the challenges of navigating care at home versus institutional care. We're hoping to speak with people who have experience caring for their own family members. Please email yourhealthquickly@sciam.com with the subject caregiving if you're interested. For Your Health Quickly, I'm Tanya Lewis.
And I'm Josh Fishman.
See you next time.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. March 1st, the Wisconsin Supreme Court declined to hear a challenge to the state's congressional districts after throwing out state assembly and Senate maps as unconstitutional late last year. Challengers said under the court's clarified redistricting criteria, the congressional map should be reviewed given that the GOP won 6 of 8 congressional seats with only 50% of the statewide vote. The partisan balance of the court shifted last year with the election of Justice Janet Prasewicz, who was outspoken in her campaign about Wisconsin's gerrymandered maps. Unlike the state legislative maps, though, Prasewicz did not participate in the congressional district decision. From conservative justices who sat on the previous court upholding over a decade of manipulated maps came a snarky concurrence from Justice Rebecca Bradley and Chief Justice Annette Ziegler. Quote, the new majority's reckless abandonment of settled legal precedent in Clark versus Wisconsin Elections Commission incentivizes litigants to bring politically divisive cases to this court, regardless of their legal merit. While the court rightfully denies this motion, it likely won't be long until the new majority flexes its political power again to advance a partisan agenda despite the damage inflicted on the independence and integrity of the court, the concurrence said. The court's decision does not rule out challenges after the 2024 election. We have more in Wisconsin's fight for fair maps at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1930. That was the day hundreds of thousands of activists and unemployed poured into the streets worldwide for International Unemployed Day. It was a coordinated campaign to protest conditions created by the stock market crash just 4 months earlier. Workers and the poor were the first to feel the most devastating impacts of what would quickly become the Great Depression. Organized primarily by communists, the day's actions highlighted the work of the newly formed unemployed councils and had mass appeal. The unemployed councils worked to distribute food, prevent evictions, secure utilities, and link the needs of the unemployed to the trade unions. The councils mobilized the unemployed in support during the strikes as a way to stop scabbing. They organized hunger marches and protests at relief offices. Tens of thousands came out in every city for the Unemployed Day demonstrations. In North America, cities like Boston, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Seattle, and San Francisco all drew massive crowds estimated at 40 to 50,000 each. Protesters demanded jobs and unemployment insurance. In Chicago, tens of thousands overwhelmed the streets for more than 12 hours. In Detroit and New York City, competing organizers challenged the crowd estimates with as many as 100,000 turning out in each city. Confrontations broke out between protesters and the police in both cities. Across the country, many of the unemployed were arrested or hospitalized. In New York City, outraged communist activists asserted that protesters were met with water hoses, tear gas, and guns as they marched down Broadway to City Hall. Critics argued that the crowd estimates were wildly exaggerated. But the day of action forced governments around the world to acknowledge deteriorating conditions and the devastating impact of the Great Depression.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 36 degrees Fahrenheit under cloudy conditions, and will become partly cloudy this afternoon. A few flurries of snow showers or rain possible. High will be in the mid to upper 40s, winds light and variable. Then some clouds overnight with lows in the low 20s. Winds light and variable. Then a few passing clouds tomorrow. Otherwise generally sunny. Highs near 50. Winds will remain light and variable. Pollen is still rated as none here in the town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 22 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is moderate at level 4, so take care. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.03 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 51 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 50 degrees and partly cloudy with a flood warning. Rome is 58 and partly cloudy with a flood warning. Bagram is 35 degrees and cloudy. Hong Kong is 52 degrees with light rain. Tokyo is 44 and cloudy. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 65 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 55 with showers in the vicinity. Chicago, Illinois is 42 degrees and cloudy with its continuing small craft advisory. And New York, New York is 48 degrees Fahrenheit with mist. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. At the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Ukrainian sea drones reportedly sank another Russian warship in the Black Sea yesterday, Tuesday, the latest in a series of strikes that has crippled Moscow's naval capability and limited its operations, with the war now in its third year. Successful Ukrainian drone and missile strikes have provided a major morale boost for Kyiv at a time when its undermanned and undergunned forces are facing Russian attacks along the more than 600-mile front line. Challenging Russia's naval superiority has also helped create more favorable conditions for Ukrainian grain exports and other shipments from the country's Black Sea ports. Let's see. In this latest reported strike, Ukrainian naval drones attacked the Sergei Kotov. It's a patrol ship near the Kerch Strait, which links the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, according to the Ukraine's military intelligence agency. The strike, which could not be independently verified, killed 7 members of the Russian crew and injured 6 others, while 52 were rescued, the agency said. The strike, if verified, would mark the latest successful use of Ukraine's domestically produced Magura drones, the agile, uncrewed boats that have become the Russian Navy's nemesis. Just last month, drones sank Russia's Cesar Kunikov, an amphibious landing ship, and an Inovets missile corvette. The Russian military has not acknowledged the losses of either, but they have been reported by Russian military bloggers and social media. In another attack in late December, Ukraine said it destroyed the Novocherkassk landing vessel in Crimea's port of Feodosia with long-range missiles. And those were cruise missiles, by the way. The Russian Defense Ministry said the ship was damaged in the attack, but Russian war bloggers said it was lost. The Ukrainian military has also launched a series of persistent cruise missile and drone strikes on Russian radar facilities, air defense assets, and air bases in Crimea, a region of Ukraine that Russia annexed in 2014. Increasing the pain for Moscow, Ukrainian troops also downed 2 Russian early warning and control aircraft over the Sea of Azov in January and February, depriving the Russian military of some of its most precious intelligence-gathering assets.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Wang Jin Kim and Juan Song of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Thousands of striking junior doctors in South Korea faced proceedings to suspend their medical licenses yesterday, Tuesday, while authorities pushed for police investigations into leaders of the walkouts that have disrupted hospital operations. Nearly 9,000 of South Korea's 13,000 medical interns and residents have been refusing to work for the past 2 weeks to protest a government plan to enroll thousands more students in the country's medical schools in coming years. The government ordered them to return to work by February 29th, citing a threat to public health, but most have defied the threats of license suspensions and prosecutions. Officials say South Korea must add more doctors to deal with a fast-aging population and plan to raise yearly medical school enrollment by 2,000 from the current 3,058 starting next year. But many doctors say universities are not ready to deal with that abrupt increase in the number of students, and that the country's overall medical service would eventually be hurt. The health ministry sent officials to hospitals on Monday to confirm the absence of the striking doctors in order to begin administrative steps to suspend their licenses. So far, the government has formally confirmed the absence of more than 7,000 strikers. Yesterday, Tuesday, officials continued on-site inspections of hospitals and began sending notices to some strikers about license suspension proceedings, according to the health ministry. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will not be meeting up here tomorrow for West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy's Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays, but we will be here fully in our persona on Friday for Blue Moon Spirits Friday. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here, wholly formed on Friday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.